Yep. Okay. Good afternoon all, and welcome to Planning Committee in April, last of this electoral term. And the first item on our agenda is any apologies for absence.
From Councillor Untitled Chapter.
Okay. Thank you. Item 2, any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interests? I got one in item 3.
And I've got one in item 1. Mine is personal and prejudicial.
Okay.
I'm chair of governors at Alpha. My husband's a governor at Alpha, and my granddaughter's a pupil at Alpha.
Yeah, that's making sure that right. Okay.
I'm making sure I covered all bases.
Yeah. Oh, well done.
Mary, are you staying and speaking, or are you going to leave before we consider it?
I'm leaving before
Okay.
it's considered.
I'll call you back in then.
Okay.
Thank you, Gary.
Councillor Downing.
Yeah, just a personal interest in item 3 as the developer has another work in Ponderlice.
Yeah, right. Thank you. No others? No. Thank you. So item 3 then is to approve and sign the minutes of the previous meetings as a correct record, and you'll find them on first meeting was page 1 and 2. And the second meeting then on the 22nd of March, that's page 3 and 4. Let me move them as a correct, please. Thank you. So then item 4 is, are there any items for deferral or withdrawal?
None of this stage, Chair.
Not at the moment, thank you. So right, item 5, determination of planning applications and the.
Sorry, Chair. I have got my hand.
Sorry,
I put my hand up on item 4.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to ask committee if they would defer item 3. But before I do, can I go on to point out, Mr. Chairman, that Ponderlice Town Council have made observation and objections to item 3 and item 4. And although I am a member of the Town Council, I did not vote in that meeting and I didn't take part in any discussions, just in case anybody would perceive that I predetermined. I just want to refer now to the updated sheets we've all received with the agent acting on behalf of the applicant as requested. That I don't know if there's anything echoing back, Chair.
No.
Yeah, that the applicant.
Yeah, I see one.
Okay.
Just as we're going to try with Councillor Evans.
Right, can I finish?
Yes, go
on. That the agent has asked that the application be deferred. The agent acknowledges that changes are needed to the application and certain issues could be resolved. I think, Chairman, we should afford the developer the opportunity to iron out these concerns of our officers, and I formally move that this item be deferred to the next planning committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
We'll need a second.
Yeah, is there anyone to second?
Yeah,
Oh,
Councillor Anderson.
Oh, Councillor Lewis. Okay. Councillor Smith. You voted.
Moved.
I only had my hand up to second it.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Likewise, Councillor Evans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, all right. Then, well, it's been moved and seconded that item be deferred.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll use your procedure. I'll call everybody's name out. So this is for item 3, the Ponderlice to defer to the next meeting. Councillor Cyril Anderson.
4.
Peter Black.
4.
Bill Downing.
4.
Will Evans.
4.
Mary Jones.
4.
Mike Lewis.
4.
Richard Lewis. Paulette Smith.
4.
Des Thomas.
4.
Mike White.
4.
Paul Lloyd.
I'm against.
Okay,
But
9-1, Chair.
There
So
we
that's
are.
the matter's been deferred
okay, there are then that matter has been deferred.
to the next committee, which is likely to be in June sometime.
Okay then, thank you for that. And so yeah, we moving on now then. So the first item on item 5 is the land formerly at part of Orford School in an Iron Way. And David, that's
Yes, thank you, Chair.
thank you.
Okay, second slide in, please. Okay, so members benefited from the site visit this morning. We were able to stand on an Iron Way and be able to inspect this proposed site access and the existing bus stop, which I think was beneficial to members. So to outline then, the red line is obviously the application site boundary, and as we can see, we stood in an Iron Way. The secondary access is to the west, and the main Orford campus obviously is located to the northwest of the site. And as most members are aware, the main access into Orford School is off Gower Road, and there's a second footpath access off Parkway as well. So you can see the red lines. You've got residential development to the west on Coed Van, which is originally part of Orford School. You've got an Iron Way properties, an Iron Close and Parkway, and the sheltered housing complex up on Parkway as well. So this development effectively, obviously it's still currently laid out as school playing fields, but the application has been submitted following the corporate decision originally taken in 2016 to dispose of the site. And that was subject to the proviso that enhanced artificial grass playing fields and artificial playing surface was laid out in the site, which will be funded from the capital receipt of the project. Maybe with the next slide, please, Ian. So yes, there's obviously a Google overview of the site. So obviously you can see the main campus to the northwest. Let's say residential development to the west, the existing residential development. So on the playing fields itself, you can obviously see tennis courts in the former Red Gra area. So that is still laid out at the minute. At the front of the site, obviously on Iron Way, there is the old council depot, which is included as part of the site, and that will obviously be demolished as part of the scheme. So that provides the context. You can just see to the north of the site, the footpath access, which provides access from Parkway, and obviously the secondary access to the west of the site, which, as we saw on site, will be retained as part of the development. To the east of the site as well, you'd be aware of the local facilities. You can just see King's Fish Bar. There's some other local shops, pub facilities, supermarket, etc. And as well as the comprehensive school, obviously Parkway Primary School is located some way to the east within walking distance of the site as well. So obviously that provides the context for the site. Next slide, there we go. So this obviously is the site development. You can see it's an L-shaped site that measures, I think, 3.18 hectares, still retaining somewhere 8.25 hectares for the school and the main campus of the site. So what you can see, the grey area is basically the 3G playing surface, and then you've got the two grass, the green areas of the two grassed areas for retention of playing fields, formal play, and with the athletics track going around them as well. So that development is actually being granted planning permission already in 2020. So it'll provide 3G playing surface with illumination, and that will be available not just for the school, but used as a wider community benefit as well. So that abuts the site. So the layout of the playing fields essentially dictates the layout of the residential development, which we end up with this L-shaped site. So as you can see, the single vehicle access into the site is obtained to the south from an Iron Way, which obviously breaks through where the existing council depot is. There is a frontage development of 6 houses, which is a small little cul-de-sac, a frontage development to an Iron Way, and that it's got its own private access. Members would have seen on site this morning the existing school bus lay-by, which obviously is located at this position. And as we discussed, there is the need to relocate that bus lay-by to the service bus lay-by to the west of the site, which will be expanded, and that will be designed as part of the overall highway detail layout of the highway junction as well. So you can see single access into the site, 101 houses. So you've got a main road hierarchy going through the site. You've got a couple of small cul-de-sac access points, variety of housing along the site. You can see drainage attenuation features in the middle of the site, together with a facility for play. There is a attenuation feature to the east of the site, which is essentially in the southeast corner. There is also provision there for a footpath cycleway access, which links onto Parkway, and obviously provides a permeable connection point to the local facilities on Parkway. And then to the top of the site, you can see obviously there's another facility for play. If you go on to the next slide, Ian, it shows the, yeah, there we go. So there's just some detail of, that's the layout from the approved 3G development. And you can see the layout, and obviously it would be enclosed security fencing, ball stop fencing as well. So obviously the red line was outlined at that stage for the residential development. So in terms of the principle of this development, obviously, as I said, the corporate decision was taken in 2016 to dispose of the site subject to the playing fields, and that assessed at the time the need, an open space assessment of the existing playing fields, and there was deemed to be adequate space within the playing fields to serve the school. So that principle was taken at a corporate level. In planning policy levels, obviously the site is in the urban area. It's a windfall residential site. It's obviously not allocated for development, but it's in terms of its sustainable location, the principle is deemed to be acceptable. So we go back to the next, previous slide, Ian, sorry. There we go. So back to the layout. So the layout obviously has been assessed against our placemaking agenda within a residential design guide, and it meets most of the plan and placemaking criteria within that guideline. It's a sustainable location, close to local facilities. It's got a footpath link to the east of the site, making connections to local facilities. It's got satisfactory density. I'll move on. Yes. And also it does, there's a slide later on which I'll show you in terms of green infrastructure, which we'll come on to. And obviously it provides satisfactory surface water attenuation, which will be detailed as well. So it ticks most of the boxes in terms of placemaking, residential amenities issues and within the design guide. The access, obviously it is contentious. We've had quite a number of objections to the scheme. I think there's, on the update sheet, there's another 47 additional letters of objection, and obviously they are raising issues: loss of the playing fields, additional traffic, residential parking, loss of the bus coach lay-by, and yeah, and also environmental impact and impact on local facilities. So that's out detailed within the report. In terms of highway, obviously we've assessed the highways, and as I say, it is provided for within the scheme. The new bus lay-by will be relocated. The transport assessment has assessed the impact on the local highway network and deemed to be a minimal impact for the 101 additional units. The council has carried out active travel improvements along Parkway in the not too distant past. Last year, I think that those were completed, and it will provide a sustainable location for travel. The internal carriageways got width of 5.5 meters, got footpaths either side of the carriageway. And as I say, it's got access to the southeast, and it's been assessed in terms of adequate swept path analysis to make sure the cars can adequately pass each other. As I say, if you go into next slide, Ian, or maybe one after that, possibly. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, if we keep on that one, so obviously that's typical street elevation, which shows various sections through the site, and it gives you an idea of the type of houses we are looking at. As I say, they're a mixture of 5, 4, 3, 2, and bedrooms, apartments as well. So materials consist essentially of through render and some stone cladding details and some interesting building details on the elevations as well. If you go to the next slide, Ian, please. So yeah, so this is the plan I referred to. This is the green infrastructure landscape strategy. So you can see the attenuation features and also the greening within the site. So you'll see trees within front gardens, swales and other landscape features. So it's a high quality development and meets our strategy for green infrastructure. Next slide. Sorry, is there one before that? The one back before that? No. Okay. Sorry, I thought the plan I was looking for is basically this is a policy compliance scheme which provides 35 affordable housing units in accordance with LDP policy to provide 35% in West Swansea. There is a plan, sorry, which I thought I'd put on this on the presentation, but it's not there, which shows the location of those units, which are essentially pepper potted throughout the scheme. And if we move on to the end, please, Ian, sorry, and we can show the impressions of the street elevations. There we go. So that gives an idea of, obviously that's submitted by the applicant, showing the top form of housing with the green infrastructure, attenuation feature, creating features, interesting features within the street scene. And there's 2 more of those, I think. There we go. There's another one in the central landscape area and the one at the top of the site. So that gives an idea of good quality housing, which will be provided by the development. I would bring your attention to the update sheet. You will see on the planning report there is a recommendation that this will be subject to a 1 of 6 agreement to cover affordable housing and an education contribution. I'm asking you essentially to amend that recommendation to approval to essentially approve the grant plan permission today. The reason I ask that is because the land is still currently owned by the council, and that prohibits us entering into a 1 of 6 agreement until the land is actually sold. Essentially, we can't enforce a 1 of 6 agreement against ourselves. So in lieu of that, the recommendation is to include a negatively worded condition, which basically asks that the developer enter into a 1 of 6 agreement post planning permission, but obviously prior to the development commencing. And that will obviously incorporate the provisions for education contribution, £844,000 towards Parklands Primary, all for comprehensive, and the affordable housing provision of 35 units. And with that, the recommendation is for approval with the additional condition for 22 and the additional condition 23 as well. Thank you, Chair.
Indeed, thank you very much, David. First off, we got Mr. Edwards and Mr. Thompson's objectors, and just to remind you, we've got 5 minutes between you, so when you're ready, please. Who's going to speak first?
Mr. Edwards.
Mr. Edwards?
You're on mute, Mr. Edwards.
There you are.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman of the committee. I'd ask you if you would mind reading as a committee my objections in full detail. I've made 2 objections, one initial objection and one to the moving of the bus or extending the bus stop lower down on the west to the site. Access into and out of the site, in my opinion, is inadequate. The proposed access is in the wrong position. It has to go in. If it has to go in this position, then the access needs to be widened and improved. From what Mr. Owen has said, and also the gentleman from transportation this morning, it is quite clear that they have no regard to the parking in an Arran way, the swept line analysis, which the applicants have carried out. If I could take you to the point that you cannot turn from that access in their own swept line analysis a 7.5 ton vehicle. And that would mean that a dust lorry or whatever would be unable to access or exit the site. Along that stretch of neck of land belonging to Ogfa, there's going to be 3 accesses. One is the rear access to the school. The other is the service road to the 6 houses onto an Arran Way, and the one is the new access. And as you saw this morning, Mr. Chairman, as you turn out, if you were turning towards the west, there is a tree straight in your line of vision. It is an impossible access unless it is widened, set back, and more width to allow vehicles to turn in and turn out. It's all a very confusing situation at that point. A direct access from at this point is not an ideal access because parking by residents who have nowhere else to park and heavy traffic at peak periods when the school is coming in and going out. There are parents dropping off children, cars turning in the road. There are all sorts of difficulties in that location. Alternative accesses have not been considered. When the corporate decision was made and when the site was originally offered, it was considered that Parkland's house, which is the old people's home, which is becoming vacant, would provide better access and was offered with the sale of this land. And that should be considered. There is also an access, if you look at David's Plan 2 and Plan 3, you'll see there's almost an already made access from an Arran Close onto the site. Moving the bus and the coach stops, there's been no idea or no consideration that 2 school coaches park in that location from 1:30 till 3:30 when Ogfa School comes out. That would mean extending the bus stop to the west of the site to accommodate 3 vehicles. If you look at the applicant's transportation statement, they say that there are 6 buses in that hour stopping at that bus stop. So is the bus going to stop in the middle of the road? Because the proposal at the moment is only to extend that bus stop to accommodate 1 additional vehicle. The sight lines would also be affected by extended. When the 3G pitch is built, it is proposed to use that rear access which you saw for people to use for parking at weekends and evenings to drop off people into the 3G pitch. Some of the turns on the development, some of the radii, you've seen that there are 2 sharp right angle turns.
Mr. Edwards, you're coming up to your 5 minutes.
Sorry, well, I'll just stop. Some of the turns are very, very tight. There's oversight intensification. There's 35 units virtually per hectare here. Only 44 houses have got garage or garage spaces within their curtilage. That is not adequate, and only 2 car parking spaces per dwelling.
I have to let Mr. Thompson in to speak because you've got 5 minutes between you.
Right, okay. I'll let Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
But the last point I'd make is there.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I think I've got mine to about 2.5 minutes. Okay, thank you. Schedule A Party has had a number of conversations with local residents, and this is therefore made on behalf of Schedule A Party to reflect those concerns. The objections relate to 3 main areas: environmental, including drainage, ability of local schools and healthcare to cope, and traffic. Environmental concerns are the major issue is the loss of green space in the area, which will and cannot be replaced which has a negative impact on climate change and clean air, especially damaging so close to a school. In addition, residents reported this is an area used by badgers, foxes and hedgehogs, and there may well be other flora and fauna that will be destroyed. Flooding, the concerns about flooding and the impact on the sewage and draining systems. Runoff water is a major concern. The loss of a natural soakaway of the playing fields with an already history of local flooding suggests that the existing on-street drains, already inadequate, will be overwhelmed. Further, developers plan to route the drainage system down through the existing facilities in Reader Divide Drive, where there's already a history of problems, and this may well have problems coping with the additional pressure. Local schools and health. A development of 101 houses is significant, likely to generate in excess of 250 new residents. These residents will have pressure on already strained local health, GP and dental. But a major concern is that on the impact on local schools, which may well be able to cope with increased demand. Ulfa is the most logical and is already the most oversubscribed school in Swansea, with 405 applications for 289 places this year. And last year Ulfa had to take 50 children over its admission due to the demand, and may have to do the same this year. Such pressure is unsustainable. Bishop Gore has similar application issues. In the primary school sector, Parkland School is the only primary school and daycare centre in the area. It's also oversubscribed with 45 children on the waiting list for the daycare and 61 for the overall school waiting list. Finally, the last and biggest area of concern has been traffic. Obviously, there'll be traffic during the building, which you're not a concern perhaps of this committee, but the traffic impact will be permanent and negatively impactful. The proposed development has 76 houses with 3 bedrooms or more. The developer's own traffic impact report suggests it's reasonable to assume the bulk of these would have 3 cars. That creates an instant regular, if not daily, increase of 218 additional vehicles, plus related visitors. An Iron Way, as you heard, the access point for development is already a busy bottleneck of a road. This, coupled with the fact that the whole length of an Iron Way from roundabout to Sketchy Park Shops until New Mill Road has street parking, means any further street parking opposite the access development could realistically, regularly and dangerously restrict the roads to 1.5 lanes. The nature of the access onto an Iron Way will also create a potentially hazardous junction for traffic and pedestrians, which is a particularly acute concern given that this is a school bus drop-off point and has a lot of pupil drop-off traffic. The estate would also generate significantly increased traffic along an Iron Way, which cannot really accommodate it, down Sketty Park Drive. The developer's own figures suggest 82% of traffic will travel this way to the A4216 junction, Dilwyn Road, Sketty Park Road. This will likely create, especially at peak times, a major and unsustainable traffic problem. There is also concern that the bus drop-off problem being so close to the access may create safeguarding issues. The overwhelming response from the local residents we've received is that they are asking the council to refuse or at least restrict this development. Thank you, Chair. I've tried to be as quick as I can.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. And next we have the agent, Phil Baxter. With us. Yeah, there we are.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. I represent West Acres in relation to this planning application. As Committee will be aware, this is a full application for the construction of 101 dwellings on land that formerly forms part of Ulfa School grounds, fronting onto a neighbouring way in Sketty. The land has been deemed surplus to council requirements, and West Acres proposed to construct a high-quality development of market and affordable homes with an emphasis on placemaking and with green infrastructure at its heart. The application site is not allocated for residential developments, therefore it constitutes a windfall site within the urban area. The application follows detailed and very constructive pre-application discussions with your officers over a number of months, and the scheme presented represents the outcome of positive collaboration. The scheme proposes a mix of 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 bed homes, which provides a broad mix to ensure a sustainable and balanced community. This includes 35 affordable homes in the form of 1, 2 and 3 bed homes, with a mix of social rent and low cost home ownership. 66 market homes are proposed in the form of 3, 4 and 5 bed homes. The affordable homes are dispersed across the site. Placemaking is a cornerstone of the national and local planning agenda in Wales, and the proposed development is considered to reinforce the qualities and character of the surrounding area, whilst ensuring contemporary, attractive development is achieved. The development is founded on a comprehensive and coherent placemaking approach that relates to a master plan for the entire site, which has been formulated through a multidisciplinary approach. The layout ensures a clearly structured, walkable neighbourhood with a hierarchy of streets and spaces centred around green infrastructure. Traffic calming measures are incorporated, which allow the street to be designed for low speeds. Pedestrian routes are provided on each side of the primary estate road, together with a pedestrian and cycle link provided to the southeast corner of the site, giving access to local shops and facilities nearby. All the Section 106 requests are agreed as part of this development, which includes the 35% affordable housing and financial contributions towards upgrading the local educational facilities. This will ensure that the proposal will adequately mitigate the impacts of the development on local infrastructure and achieve a high quality, sustainable development that meets the well-being objectives of the Welsh Government. I'd conclude and agree with your officers that the development is acceptable in all respects and meets the policy objectives of Future Wales and the local development plan. I'd urge committee to accept the advice of your officers and to approve the application accordingly. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. And there are two local members wish to address this now. Councillor Philpott and then Councillor Day, with your 3 minutes each. Councillor Philpott.
Chairman, with your discretion, Councillor Day and myself have sort of like worked here so we don't overextend our time. So he will go first.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you to the committee for the site visit and for the comments that have been made. I'm addressing the committee as the ward councillor representing those objections which have been listed, plus the 270 people who signed an online petition. There are 7 areas of concern, some of which have already been mentioned. People have been disappointed about the selling off the green space, but that's something which is outside the purview of this particular committee, as Cabinet has already decided to do the sale of this surplus land. I want to focus firstly on the safety of pupils and pedestrians, and I don't feel that this has been adequately addressed within the report. Alpha, as you know, is the largest school in Swansea. There's been no measurement, as far as I can see, of pupil movements, particularly along an Iron Way, but as you saw this morning, even during the course of the day, there are some, and there are significant movements, as you can imagine, at start and finish times during the day. The Highways report itself, using the modelling, states that there will be daily flows of 546 vehicles from the development, and obviously that will add to the concerns that there are about the safety of pupils walking along this particular piece of road. Highways originally were asked for their comments, and the report that they provided initially indicated that this particular proposal and application should be refused. I know there have been some changes subsequently, but you'll need to satisfy yourselves as a committee that those changes will address all the safety issues. And if you approve this, then it will be done, I think, on the basis of inadequate information, as there doesn't seem to be that issue of measurement of pupil movements along the road and pedestrian movements from the different aspects of the west of the site going towards the shops. The second area that I want to address is the impact on residents, clearly those especially adjacent to the site during the construction period and when the properties are occupied. When the properties are occupied, there is concern over the loss of privacy, amenity and light, and levels of the ground on the east of the site could lead to further flooding for properties to the east. And if you are minded to approve the proposal, I would suggest that there be further conditions or strengthening of the conditions, which would include, for example, a strengthening of the requirement for a management plan, which needs to be in place before construction starts. We've had examples in Sketty of where these plans have been requested but not actually put into place until construction has actually started. Secondly is that the residents whose properties are on the boundary of the new development be consulted on the nature of the boundary materials that would be used. So that's particularly those properties which would be at the rears of the new development, number 72 to 101. And there are concerns, as I said, about the overlooking and amenity being addressed, and I would hope that those issues would be considered if you are minded to take into account and approve this particular application. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Philpott.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say there's lots of detail yet to be provided from the developer as regards this application, and that makes me very nervous. From experience of other applications where we haven't had the full detail in, we're assured that the detail will come in, but we haven't seen it on the report before us when we've made decisions. Not that I'm making the decision today. And complications have arisen from those past committees where they have been approved, and then post-committee, post-approval, we find ourselves saying the devil was in the detail and we should have ensured that the detail was there before we approved the application. For example, with the Section 278 agreement, I'm mindful that the highway impact will affect more than, I think people may not be muted. I can hear myself echoing. So I'm mindful that the highway impact will be more than just the immediate vicinity. The highway impact will also extend into the wider area, and particularly down to Parkland Primary School, which is in a very, very short space of area. The 278 agreement, for example, again, it says that that any works to an iron, to the access and egress onto an iron way will be substantially completed before the access works, before any construction could take place. But what does substantially completed mean? Again, Councillor Day referred to other sites that we've had developed in Sketty, and because the accesses weren't completed properly prior to development starting, it caused no end of issues. We've also had, although we had a verbal update this morning, part of the report says plans need to be sought from the council's highway officer, reparking, highway safety, and issues including the proposed moving the school bus fare area. Well, surely that should be within the report. We shouldn't be looking at verbal updates from officers at the time of the site visit. It should be there for in the public domain so that they can see it prior to this application being considered. It's also very vague as to whether the streets are going to be adopted under Section 38. I'll just refer back to two other development sites in Sketty, Bellway site, Owler Moor and Howells Reach. Both of those have been completed for quite some time, but those agreements are not yet in place. And when we have such a significant drainage, the highways issues, and particularly the drainage issues, which have been cited as a concern, we've got an attenuation tank that is extremely close to the highway. So if that isn't maintained, what will happen when or if those works fail? Because they do need to be maintained, as does, we saw from the design map, all of the greenery. So you've got all of the landscaping areas. If they are left, if they are not managed, then of course the site becomes unruly very, very quickly. Plans, the third item, plans not being consistent, the link to Parkway, which the designing out crime officer has suggested should not go ahead, given the potential for antisocial behaviour and crime. Part of the community safety aspect of the report says that it should encompass good levels of safety, both perceived and actual safety. Well, of course, that contradicts what the designing out crime officer mentioned. And we do know that that pathway, where it could be situated, would be in a very remote area coming down the side of a sheltered complex, which would really upset the residents there. And we do have little pockets of antisocial behaviour in Sketty, and I do think that that would be part of an issue. And I don't think we should be in a situation of having to try and manage those issues after the event. They should be, as the officer had said, designed out. Affordable housing. Mr. Owen has just said that there is an update, that he's now had a plan to show where those houses would be, where the units would be. But it's not been submitted with this application that you are looking at today. It's only by a verbal update again. You know, the number, type, location, that should be within the plan today. If I was a member of the committee, I would have moved that the matter be deferred. I don't have that responsibility. I must leave it to the direction of the committee. But I do feel that there is a valid reason for deferral of this application, so that all of the full details can actually be put before you. However, should the committee be minded to approve the application, I would suggest that there be informative attached to conditions to confirm that local ward members be consulted regarding the section 278 highway improvements as suggested this morning at the site visit, so that we can keep a tight control over the inevitable improvements that we will need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got two speakers, Councillor Des Thomas, then Councillor Diamond. You're still muted there.
Right, successful. Right, thank you, Chair. Of course, we've been talking about development of this part of the Olkfa playing fields for a number of years. It's finally before committee. There are a couple of issues. Olkfa School being oversubscribed to start with, of course, it's only oversubscribed is due to the parental choice, and properties in this location will have, you know, they will have first call on places within the school, so there may be less room for parental choice, but there are other schools within close proximities with space to take up that aspect of it. I had noted, made a note of the Designing Out Crime report. It's on page 15, bottom of page 15, going over to page 16. And it does strike me as, what's the point of having a Designing Out Crime officer if we are not going to listen to his advice? I do see potential for difficulties in the future with footpaths, cycleways that are not designed to ensure that they're visually open and are overseen, and so on and so on. So that's a serious concern of mine. Yeah, I think we need answers for that one. The other thing about the social housing aspect, I think we need to be assured that they indeed are pepper potted across the development and are not allocated into one small area, which would be detrimental to the you know, to the infusion of the mini development that's taking place here. We try to do it in other places. Some places are more helpful than others, but I think, to me, they're important factors in the planning application. The other point I'd like to make is the one which we've come across now, is the drainage aspect, which comes now under separate reports. okay, this is my final meeting of the planning committee, but if we were going on, I would find that difficult not to consider drainage aspects of development along with the outline or even the full planning applications. But that's something that I think you need to consider for the future. Thank you, Chairman.
Indeed, thank you very much, and Councillor Downing.
Yeah, Chair. Yeah, it was nice to hear that capital receipts are going to be used for the benefit of the school by a 3G pitch. I know a lot of councillors are jealous that in their area they haven't got land surplus to requirements to fund this for the school and the community as a whole. The other thing, the question was asked this morning, was the safeguarding side of it, that there was no access from this site onto the school. I can't stress that any more strongly, that that has got to be 100% correct. I did have concerns on the highway aspect while we were there, because as we noticed today, if we weren't parking in a bus bay, we'd have nowhere to park. We'd have to walk about a half a mile. I did have then concerns about the bus bay being moved from what was 3 coaches to 2 coaches. I think that was what was said, and which way it was going to move, because there isn't a lot of room from that bus stop to move it both ways. So those are my concerns, and I think the highway officer was there, and he was saying that, you know, that he would look definitely closely, especially on the access, to make sure that the splay is right. And I know we don't like knocking trees down, but if a tree is in the way of an entrance, then it can always be moved. But my only concerns are on highways. The rest, like Des has said, has been this land was for development. And the other thing he did touch on before he was finishing on the committee was about SAB. And I think what it did, we could give planning permission today, but SAB, which is the Sun's bit of it, could turn it down. So this planning then is then lost. So, you know, there's 2 aspects now to planning permission. We give it, but somebody else, who are not councillors, can turn it down. So, you know, that's the other side of it. Anyway, just the safety, the road safety side was worrying me this morning, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you both. And Councillor Evans. Still noted, Devil.
It's the trouble when you've got to demute. Sorry about that. Similar to Councillor Downing, I mean, I've got reservations. I need answers from the officers on the key points that have been raised today by the objectors. First of all, Mr. Edwards, when he was on about access and egress from the site for large vehicles, it did seem to be a bit of a pinch point when I look at it, but I'm not an expert. I don't think the tree to the left of that access point will need to be removed, but I'll have to see confirmation on that. If it's got to be removed, perhaps they can replant another one somewhere else. So yes, the key things for me is the access and egress from the site, and also the resiting of the lay-by for the buses. Is it totally suitable? Can it accommodate the amount of transport which school buses will take up? And then we got the service buses coming along, and perhaps they won't be able to park anywhere, and that won't be appropriate for the bus to stop in the middle of the road, because that will be obstructing the highway. I mean, if a civilian did that, you'd have a ticket from the police if they saw it. So just on those things, and there's a couple of other issues that have been raised, and I'm sure the officer can come back, highways officer and David. Can you come back on the points raised, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've got no other hands up, so perhaps if we can have anything you want to catch up on there, David, and Pat, the highways.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I'll start with the footpath access at the southeast corner to the site. Yes, obviously, crime prevention officer has outlined concerns about that, and the point I would make is that I think that's necessary. Otherwise, the only connection in and out of the site will be restricted to a single access point. So I think that is necessary. That's a footpath access only, and we provide provision for cyclists as well. And I think that provides additional connectivity of the site to local facilities. So in this case, I would override the advice of the crime prevention officer and agree that it should be provided in interest of permeability of the site. There is no other access into the site, so it will be a completely enclosed site apart from that. Sorry about that.
Okay, I get it.
So those are the access points. Yes, on drainage, there is a separate SAB approval going through the process at the minute, which obviously considers the detailed layout of the scheme, which follows the principles of the drainage strategy incorporated into the scheme. Yes, it is a separate proposed consent approval system, and the principles would be acceptable, but obviously that requires the detail to be considered. And that there are issues with regards the SAB approval with the attenuation features and the location of the highway, which needs to be incorporated into the layout. The SAB approvals are automatically, in terms of SUDS features, would automatically be adopted as part of the process. Highways issues we have touched on. I'll bring Matt in a minute. The affordable housing, there is a site tenure plan which does show the location of the affordable housing and is available to view on the public website. And it does show the location of the 35 units which are pepper potted throughout the scheme. I think Ian is trying to bring that up possibly. Oh, there we go. So that's the scheme. So you can see, obviously, you've got the two colours representing the 35 units, and you've got social rented and low cost intermediate housing as well. So social rent is the blue and the purple is the intermediate low cost housing. As you can see, it's at 4 locations within the site. And obviously the design of those units mirrors the design of the open market housing within the site as well. There's lots of highways issues which have been brought up. There are detailed planning conditions 5 and 6 on the report, which would allow for the detailed design of the junction arrangement, the relocation of the bus stop to be considered through the detailed design process. That would be subject to section 38278 agreements, post consent. We can't enter into those agreements while council still owns the land, so that would need to be dealt with separately through the planning conditions. I'll bring in the highways officer at this point to comment on some of the specific issues with regards the access, traffic generation, and the bus bay location. Matt?
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. Yes, right then. Questions have been asked regarding the suitability of the access. I mean, originally, the Highway Authority did object. The access was very tight. The developer then has gone back and he's amended his curb radii so that where you've got a priority junction and it's a bit tight for vehicles, you've got 2 real options. Your options are that either to widen the receiving arm of the junction or to amend your curb radii to ease the turn in. They've amended the curb radii, they've rerun all the swept path analysis, and we've got no concerns in regard to vehicles, even big vehicles, being able to enter and exit the development site. Councillor Evans mentioned a tree close to the junction. That is tight. It is tight to the back edge of the visibility display. I couldn't be drawn on whether we would need to lose it at this stage, because we haven't seen the detail of the junction design yet. That's something which will come after. I've consulted with colleagues in transportation regarding the bus lay-by. That that's the council department who manage school buses and also our link with the service bus companies, and they're content that the proposed lay-by extension is sufficient for the needs of the school and service buses. One of the members, I didn't write down which one, that mentioned highway adoption. Highway adoption is obviously it's a consideration for the Highway Authority. Adoption isn't a mandatory process, and it requires the applicant to want to offer their streets for adoption, and then following technical approval, the highway authority to want to take those streets for adoption. The design as proposed appears on the face of it to be to an adoptable standard, or something that which we could consider adopting should the applicant wish to offer them for adoption. And as David said, the SAB process as it is, once SAB structures have SAB approval, the adoption of those for maintenance by the SAB is a mandatory process. They have to take those for maintenance. So the drainage features, once approved by the SAB, would have to be taken by the sustainable drainage body for maintenance.
Okay, thank you both. Councillor Thomas, you got your hand up again.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm reassured by the pepper potting of the social housing aspect of the development. Thank you for that. Can we just go back to the Designing Our Crime Officers report? Is it a case of the current development that restricts the access, or is it the new development, or is it the 101 properties? You know, if there was 100 properties, could it be accommodated, or is it the current houses that are restricting it?
I follow what you mean. Obviously, we got the scheme is for 101 units.
Yeah,
so,
but can we have the plan back up, please?
Yeah, sure.
Right. So what's restricting the width of the cycle path stroke footpath?
Well, obviously you've got the location of plots 85 and 86, obviously, and I have to say as well that the site is quite tight because you have obviously got that attenuation feature, drainage feature there, which obviously dictates to a large extent the layout of that cycle link.
So it's all the new development that is restricting the dimensions of the access?
Yes, that I think that would be designed to be a 3 metre wide stroke cycle footway access, and that would obviously link through the grass verge of the car park to the right on Parkway, and that connects.
But if, for instance, the development was reduced to 100 properties and 85 was omitted, there would be ample room for a
it would
safe
certainly if 85 was deleted, then that allows the opportunity to have a bit more flexibility in that part of the site, certainly.
Yeah, because you see that, you know, the Designing Our Crime Officer raises a very serious point, don't they, for generations to come. You know, these houses are going to be there for, I don't know, 100 years, say, and you know, if it's problematic, then now's the time to address it.
Yeah, I can see where he's coming from. The officer obviously likes single access development. He doesn't like footpath accesses into residential developments, which is contrary to good placemaking guidance and contrary to the guidance in a residential design guide, which obviously refers to the requirement of providing good connections from residential development to local facilities. This obviously would be a more convenient access. So essentially, people live within the site, and you know, obviously they would be restricted to the single vehicle access point, obviously, to walk and cycle, etc. So obviously, they'd have to walk further effectively.
Yeah, but it's even I've got nothing against the access at all. I think the access at that point is a good aspect of it for as you say, connection to the local amenities. But it's through a car park and then through a dog leg. But you know, it's potentially problematical, isn't it?
It would work better if there was more space, I grant you.
Yeah.
But it's been designed around the constraints within the site, and in particular the attenuation feature, certainly.
But the constraints are because there's 101 properties, not 100. If it was 100 properties, the constraints wouldn't be so constricted, if I could put it that way.
Certainly, obviously, by deleting a property, then there's an opportunity to redesign that feature, certainly.
Yeah, okay, thank you, David.
Okay, thank you. Councillor White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a query, really. Obviously, we've done the site visit this morning, and this is on Alpha School site. Just a query: was the school consulted on this development?
Yeah.
It's a good question. Not specifically. I think that they're certainly aware of the application, and their consultation goes back, obviously, to the decision to dispose of this parcel of land back in 2016, and even before then, I think, where there was lots of consultation between the school, the education department, corporate property.
Okay. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. A fair point to raise. I got no other hands up, so no. So the recommendation before you is, you see that on page 37, is one of approval. So we will now take a vote on that recommendation.
Councillor Cyril Anderson.
For.
Peter Black.
Against.
Phil Downing.
For.
Will Evans.
For.
Mary Jones gone. Mike Lewis.
For.
Paulette Smith.
For.
Des Thomas.
Against.
Mike White.
For.
Sorry, is Richard Lewis present? No, no, Richard Lewis and Paul White.
10-4.
That's 7-4-2 against Chair. So that's carried.
That's carried. Thank you very much.
Paul, Councillor Mary Jones.
Oh, yeah, do that first. Right.
Just trying to call Councillor Mary Jones back in.
Chair, before you go on to the next, am I able to, I know you'll indulge me, you know I asked for an informative to be attached to the condition. Is that possible?
Well, we've taken the vote now, are we, based on what we've heard and in the update sheet?
Yeah, I don't think it needs to have any amendment. It's just for the informative to include local members within the discussing the 278, which would be good practice anyway, wouldn't it, to include local board members? They may be.
Yeah, if you don't mind, we're moving on to the next item now, but we can take that up.
It wasn't moved or seconded, Councillor Philpott, sorry, so.
Yeah.
I've tried calling Councillor Mary Jones back in and I
move on, shall we?
She's not answering.
All right, thank you. Well, she may join us shortly.
Yeah.
The next item 2 then, is land to the southwest of Bailey Glass Farm in Lecher. And that is over to Chris.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think Ian's got the presentation. So we did a site visit for this morning. I think it was quite useful for everyone who was able to attend. So as you can see, the site is largely triangular in shape. It is approximately 3.2 hectares in size and largely comprises agricultural land used for grazing animals. The site's currently surrounded to the north, west and east by residential development. So to the north, you've got residential properties which front onto Glebe Road. To the west, you've got the existing council houses, which are you can see there within various kind of streets and side streets. And if you go down to the next slide, Ian, the next slide shows part of the Barrett's development, which is under construction to the east. I think some of those houses are occupied, and the members who were there this morning could certainly see them in the background. So we have got a right of way which runs down the eastern side of the site, which we partially walked down this morning. And to the very, very southern end of the site, then you've got open fields. So the application is allocated in the LDP for residential development. Reference is only made to the erection of 60 dwellings on the site, which is a point which we'll perhaps discuss further on in the meeting. For this particular development, 98 dwellings are proposed. Of them, 37 are affordable housing, 61 are private. As you can see from the layout, there are two main points of vehicular access into the site, one from the north, one from the south. So the northern access, which comes in off Heel Penebella, I think it is, that serves 72 of the dwellings. And then the access from the southern end, which is Heel Wern, serves the remaining 26. Most of the trees within and around the perimeter of the site are to be retained. You can see there, there's various trees, hedgerows, etc., which we will, as I said, which will be retained, and they will also be supplemented by additional planting. The density of the development is somewhere in the region of 30 houses per hectare, which is pretty much in accordance with industry standards. And I would suggest from just looking at the layout there, the site appears to be relatively quite spacious. Seems to be quite a lot of little pockets of open space. We've got a play area up in the eastern corner of the site. And all of the dwellings have got their own kind of car parking areas and quite spacious gardens and so on. If you compare in terms of the layout, if you can compare it to the Barrett's development to the east, I would suggest this development, which obviously takes into account our promotion of things like green infrastructure and so on. It's probably a more spacious development than the Barrett's development to the east, but we do accept that the number of dwellings is higher than the figure indicated in the LDP. If you can just go on here into some of the elevations, as you can see, the dwellings, they're all kind of quite modern. I've just given you a quick snapshot of what they look like. They are mainly combination of brick and some are render. And in terms of the houses, we've got a combination of 1-bedroom flats, 2-bed houses, 3-bed houses, and some 4-bedroom. Okay, if you can go back up to the layout plan very quickly, Ian, you can just about make out where the affordable, perhaps you can't, but the affordable houses are indicated on that plan. They are kind of spread throughout the site. They are. There we are. Thank you, Ian. You can actually see them. They are the houses with the purple dots on them. So as you can see, they are kind of spread out within the site. Obviously, the design of them varies slightly, but they are. The design of them is akin to the open market equivalents. So the application is obviously recommended for approval. There is one amendment, Chair, that we need to make to the recommendation. The recommendation lists a number of Section 106 requirements, and it makes reference to the need for a token crossing on Bryn Lucha Road. That's a mistake on our part, I'm afraid. so I apologise for that. The recommendation needs to refer to the token crossing on Glebe Road, not Bryn Lucca Road. So Glebe Road's the main road which runs to the north of the site. So if that amendment can be taken into account, Chair, when voting is taken later on in the process, please.
Indeed, will do. Thank you.
Okay.
So all right, thanks. I've got call on Mr. Baxter again as the
Objector first, Jeff.
Sorry,
Mr. Davis.
Oh, you got. All right, okay. Sorry, I call you. Sorry, Adam Davis then as an objector. Yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to just raise some concerns because I'm worried about the volume of traffic that we're going to have on Bryn Lucca Road because it's currently a 20 mile an hour, and I'm just worried about the increased traffic that we're going to see on that as well. I'm also worried about the proportion of affordable houses because in the previous application, I think there were more, and I think it's a mistake for the numbers to be reduced. I also just wanted to sorry, bear with me just a second. Yeah, sorry, that's it from me for the time being. I just wanted to raise some objections about the volume, about the number of affordable houses being reduced in the plan, as well as it being oversubscribed, as well as it being more properties than what the local development plan has sort of put forward, because I think we need less proportion of houses in the development, but also more of it to be affordable housing. That's what I wanted to raise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Right, go back to Mr. Baxter now.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. Once again, I represent Pobble Group and Jehu Group in relation to this application. The application proposes the construction of 98 homes on this allocated site in Lucca. The site comprises undeveloped greenfield land, and its topography falls from north to south. As your officers have advised, the site's largely triangular in shape and feature three main boundaries: to the north by the rear curtilages of properties fronting onto Glebe Road, to the east by lands currently under construction for new homes, and the west by the rear curtilages of properties fronting onto Bailey Glass and Close Randir. The proposal comprises 98 homes split between affordable and open market homes. There is actually a significantly greater amount of affordable housing being proposed on this development than the policy requirements dictate for the area, so I'll just remind committee of that. The proposal includes a mix of 1-bed apartments, 2-bed, 3-bed and 4-bed homes, providing a range of homes to deliver a balanced community. The affordable homes are dispersed all across the site and, as your officers have advised, are indistinguishable from the open market homes. In terms of the layout, the proposal retains many natural features throughout the site, including the strong tree line located central and to the eastern boundary. This provides the scheme with screening to the east and helps to soften the impact from further afield. As there is a strong mature tree line dividing the site centrally, the layout features a northern and southern section, each with a point of access via Hale Pennabailey and Hale Owen, respectively. Taking into account the site constraints and the need to retain the key natural features and open space, the layout demonstrates that the sites can easily accommodate the 98 homes proposed without giving rise to concerns of overdevelopment. Indeed, numerous pre-application discussions and negotiations during the course of the application have focused on the need to incorporate green infrastructure and to promote the placemaking objectives of national and local planning policy, which is considered the scheme successfully delivers. Significant collaboration has taken place on this application with the design, planning, drainage, highways, trees and ecological officers to arrive at the scheme before you today. And the development team have worked tirelessly with your officers to arrive at the positive recommendation before you. All of the Section 106 contributions requested are agreed to in order to adequately mitigate the impacts of the development. This includes the delivery of the affordable housing, albeit promoting more than the minimum requirement in accordance with policy. £51,000 towards highway improvements, £12,500 towards right-of-way improvements, £30,000 towards upgrading an existing multi-use games area in Park Williams, and £332,000 towards educational improvements. I conclude and agree with your officers that the development is acceptable in all respects and meets the objectives of Future Wales and the adopted local development plan. I'd urge committee to accept the advice of your officers and to approve the application accordingly. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Your first speaker to address this is local ward member first, Councillor Richards.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. I think I have to declare an interest, first of all, a personal interest, because I'm a governor of Castlecourt Primary School, and I'm going to mention the school in my ward when I speak this afternoon. So just a personal interest. Firstly, can I many thanks to councillor colleagues and officers who came out on the site visit this morning. In my 3 minutes I get to speak, I feel I need to highlight issues that impact the residents in my ward. I note straight up, first thing I want to mention is I note that the consultation does not formally close until the 11th of April because of the problem that we had, putting it in the newspapers. And that if we receive any comments or objections between now and then this item will need to be rescheduled to a further planning meeting. It concerns me that colleagues have been asked to make a decision without the full evidence in front of them. Clearly, we've got an awful lot of evidence, but there may be something else that comes in between now and the 11th of April that will mean that the discussions we've had, that you have today will have to be gone through all over again. I wonder whether actually this fits in with the principles that we've been taught about decision making as councillors. I just make that point. I have to say I welcome the high level of affordable housing in this development. As a local member, I realise that people need homes in this area and many people need good quality homes for rent. I am, however, concerned that the figure of 98 homes is substantially larger than the figure in our local development plan. And yes, we can look at the estate to the east, which is the new Barrett estate. But of course, if we look to the estate to the west, which are our council houses, they tell a very different story of wide streets and far more spaced out. With regard to the natural environment, trees, hedgerows and wildlife, there are conditions and reports attached to the application which I welcome. However, it still concerns me that other developments have had similar safeguards in place with some disastrous consequences. So I'm looking for reassurance that our wild green spaces and our wildlife will absolutely be protected. Drainage, the plans for soakaway and permeable surfaces, glad to see that. But again, we need to ensure going forward that those stay, because any paving over could cause problems. And as a local member, I've seen the water that gushes down that field and comes out in the bend of Culver Road as it goes over to the Marsh Road. The education report, I have to say they seem to have totally overlooked Castlecourt Primary School, which is the catchment primary school in my ward. It's a 15-minute walk away from the centre of the site, as detailed in the developer's transport assessment. And I believe that Castlecourt may also have vacancies as well as Treuchel. So I'm disappointed that our local primary school is not mentioned in this report. My last point is about highways. I've been in contact with highways officers as a ward member about complaints from residents in Bryn-Llwchwyr Road. Currently, drivers use Bryn-Llwchwyr as a rat run to avoid traffic calming measures that are in other parts of the area. I indeed commissioned 20-mile-an-hour speed limits back in 2018 for most of the roads in my ward. But the problem, of course, is getting drivers to stick to the 20-mile-an-hour limit. The developer's transport assessment indicates that 80% of people use cars and vans, and they calculated, based in January 22, when people still hadn't fully all gone back to work, 57 two-way trips in each morning peak and 63 two-way trips at each evening peak. This is going to have an impact on the people in Hale Owen and Hale Penabailey who currently live in cul-de-sacs, and people in surrounding areas as well, especially Brentford Road. Going through the report on page 80, page 82 and page 84, all mention improvements to footpath and the public right-of-way, the Toucan crossing on Glebe Road. As I pointed out this morning, it had been changed to Brentford, but I'm glad we've sorted that out. And of course, in those earlier reports, they mentioned physical traffic calming on Brentford Road. The developer then queries whether traffic calming measures are obsolete, as there's a 20-mile-an-hour scheme on Brentford, which I've just referred to earlier, that one that was started by me in 2018. I would suggest that the traffic calming measures for Brentford Road are not indeed obsolete. There is still the same problem, and the complaints from residents in that area regarding rat running, speeding cars going up and down Brentford certainly has not got any better. As a ward member, I clearly had to represent how I believe this will impact residents who are in my ward at the moment. And I'd like an update and a response, please, on the points that I've made so far. My final thing, Bidey Glass Farm, I think they were very worried about their septic tank, which is actually in the field. But I understand from this morning that that's been sorted, that they'd actually be linked to the main sewerage from now on, which they should be probably putting bunting up about that, I would think. But thank you. That's all I've got to say, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well stretched 3 minutes there. Right, thank you. Councillor Robert Smith, I think you're from the adjoining ward, aren't you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And can I thank Councillor Christine Richards for leading on this afternoon, because I know she's captured many of the points that I was hoping to make this afternoon. A few issues that I would like to raise. The first is in regarding to the density of the development. Now, I note the comment in the report that 60 should not be regarded as an absolute cap, and I think that's been reinforced by the officer this afternoon. However, I note that the proposal is for 38 dwellings more than the LDP allocation, and that is a significant departure from the 60 originally envisaged, and that would indicate that, notwithstanding the fact that the density here is lower than in the adjoining development, the new development, the Barrett site to the east, a lower density was originally envisaged for the Bailey Glass site, and I think that's something that needs to be considered. The plans as they stand would result in the final coalescence of Upper Locher and Lower Locher, and you can argue, well, Upper Locher and Lower Locher has been merging for some time, but I mean, this would be the final coalescence there, and that brings me on to another issue, which is in relation to the LEAP, on the open space to the north of the site. What we have there is at the moment an unspoilt piece of land that is a natural boundary between Upper Locher and Lower Locher, as I said earlier. We're talking about putting a local equipped area of play in that natural unspoiled area, and I think there is a missed opportunity here, because it doesn't adjoin with the neighbouring development, the Barrett site, nor with opportunities perhaps on the Bryn Llwchwr side either. and that there is an opportunity to be a lot more creative to provide much needed play area, but also avoid encroaching onto that specific part of the site, and that could be left as it is as a natural boundary. So I think that is something that needs to be considered. I also look at the report, and there are a number of references to overlooking to distances between the proposed site and houses in Bailey Glass, in Hill, Pennabailey, and in Close Randare. What isn't addressed is the distances with the houses in Ffordd Maria and the other elements of the new development on the Barrett site. I'm particularly concerned about plots 54 to 59, where I think that to the and that area of the development, especially given that there's reference to flats with balconies. Now, I don't think that the report has considered that the impact of those properties overlooking, especially the new houses in Ffordd Maria and the new development. So I think that needs to be considered, especially given the difference in levels, and there is a significant difference in the levels between where the flats would be situated and the rest of the development. I'm glad to note the Token development, Token crossing would be provided for Glebe Road, and I think that was a serious mistake in the report. Not apportioning blame, but I mean, that does put a different complexion on it, and given that is a significant difference to what's in the report, and the fact that the deadline for consultations was advertised on the 11th of April, I think that should have be considered by committee this afternoon. So those are my comments, Chair, and for those reasons, I mean, I'm not happy to support the. I wouldn't be happy to support the proposal as outlined this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Will Evans.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thanks to the two ward councillors for coming today and addressing us on these issues. Of course, as and from the new election, it'll be one ward, so we won't have the differential between Upper Lucken and Lower Lucken. It'll all be two ward. Yeah. But there'll be 3 councillors, so that'll be a big change. Now, I'd like to know from the legal officer first, are there any what are the implications for us as a committee dealing with this matter today, when in fact the consultation period is still running? Would there be any implication on us dealing with it if that is the case? That's the first thing. And the other thing I want clarification on, which Councillor Smith raised, was the possible overlooking aspects and separation distances within the site. It doesn't appear from what I've been read and what I've seen today, for instance, the site is well sort of laid out. Could the officer just give me a reassurance that there is no overlooking? In other words, it complies with the regulations for separation distances, etc. So just one confirmation of that. Thank you.
Just a second. Okay, I've got no other hands up for a minute. So Jonathan first with the legal issue.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, to answer Councillor Evans's point, the local planning authority is obliged to consider all the objections that are received, and some of these may be received after today's committee. So the issue will be really the nature of those objections and comments. If they are a repeat of what's already been submitted, then members have got those comments in front of them and have read the report, so there probably wouldn't be any need to bring those back. But if substantial new issues were raised in the objections, then the local planning authority may well have to bring that back to the committee. So it really would depend on the nature of the observations and comments that were submitted. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, can I ask you, Jonathan?
Yeah.
It seems a bit odd that once it's approved by committee, that's it, isn't it? That's the final decision of, and you were saying the authority can come back later on and retract all what's gone on.
Well, it's subject to those the comments. I think the resolution, does it say that is what's in the report? So it would depend on those comments that are received, whether they are substantial enough to consider to be brought back before members again, or if it's a repeat of what you've already heard, there's no new issues, then the local planning authority could decide then, well, there's no need to bring that back for the same point which you're already considering now.
No, I appreciate that, Jonathan, but if there's a new point which hasn't already been raised, within the situation that the authority may want to hear this case again, are they empowered to do that? And because it's a very unusual circumstance, I understand. And is it wise for us as a committee today to deal with it at this stage when the consultation is not completed?
I can't really add to more of what I've said, but obviously, you know, members have got the right to defer. That obviously is a matter for members if they are concerned about that.
We can get some further advice from Ian as well.
So I think what we're asking committee for is effectively to delegate the decision to the head of planning and city regeneration, so that if no new observations are submitted, committee, if they're minded to support the recommendation, delegate to the head of planning and city regeneration the power to issue the decision. So until the decision notice is actually issued, the planning permission hasn't been granted. If new issues were raised between now and the 11th of April, then we would be obliged to report that matter back to the next planning committee.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I got Councillor Anderson next.
Chair, just I understand what the unit have just said there now, but surely wouldn't it be better to defer this and wait until the 11th of April? Well, in case there's a case, I'm proposing that we defer this until that survey comes back to us.
We'll have to get some advice on that first, wouldn't we?
You'd have to wait till June then.
And beyond, yeah, more than likely beyond, between everything and the training that will have to take place and so on. Yeah. First off then, I got no other hands up. Does Chris, do you want to come back with anything, or highways?
Yeah, I'll come back. Well, on the issue of the press notice, I mean, the one thing I would say on that is, you know, we have done this before. I know there have been occasions where we've the publicity exercise for one reason or another has not quite expired. So we've brought applications before members of the committee, asked you to look at them on the proviso that, you know, we will only issue a decision on the basis that no new objections come in before the expiry of the press notice, as in this case. So I did look earlier. I mean, the report was kind of signed off by myself early part of last week. I think it was Monday. We've not had any objections since last Monday, so that nothing new has come in the last kind of 8 days. And the deadline for the 21-day period is next Monday, so there's another 6 days. So no, we have done this before. It's far from ideal, you know. We kind of accept that, and I think you know, one of the reasons we are largely presenting it to you today is because we've got this big time lag until the next available committee, which isn't going to be until I think probably the second week of June. I mean, as officers, you know, we wouldn't be comfortable in issuing a decision if, you know, objections came in which raised completely new issues. You know, it wouldn't be fair on members of the public. It wouldn't be fair in the planning committee. So we will check that before any decision was issued, if indeed councillors did decide to accept the recommendation.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. There's quite a few different issues been raised. Sorry, if I've made a note of some, and forgive me if I've missed any out. The ward councillor, Councillor Richards, obviously made reference to the ward school. I can't remember the names. It was it wasn't Castle Court, but it was something along those lines. We did speak to our colleagues in education when we returned to the site visit. What our education officers have said is they have only taken into account the potential impact of the development on the catchment schools. So the 4 catchment schools are those which are set out in the report, which is why we are asking for contributions towards, is it, I think the Triachaf, and not the school in the ward. That's what we. Yeah, that's
sorry,
what we've
that comes through.
Sorry, Councillor Richards.
That's what we've been advised today. We asked the question, and the advice was it's the catchment schools that have been taken into account. So obviously on the basis that some of the catchment schools have got capacity issues, it's on that basis that we are asking for the financial contributions towards those schools. I mean, as planners, we can only take into account, are there any shortfalls in education provision in terms of numbers of pupils and the number of pupils generated by the development. Where the pupils actually go is not really an issue for us as planning officers. The only issue we can take into account is demand.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of the overlooking issues, Ian, could you get that layout plan back up, please, if you could? We've taken into account the overlooking impact from the new dwellings onto the neighbouring properties. I think reference was specifically made to the block of flats in the kind of northeast corner of the site. I mean, if you look at them, they largely look eastwards and southwards, which there's no elevations which directly look onto the Barrett's development. So we haven't really got any concerns in terms of overlooking towards those properties. The other dwellings further to the south, which I think are plots 47 or 48, they don't have any habitable room windows which look onto the Barrett's development. The only thing we have raised in the report is if you go over to the western side of the site, Ian, and perhaps zoom in a bit, there's, yeah, so I think it's plot 91 and 87 to 90. Yeah, so these houses here, they've got quite long rear gardens, so there's no impact on the existing neighbours to the west. But if you note, the houses to the west, the existing houses, have quite short back gardens. I mean, obviously, there's nothing we can do about that. But what we have raised in the report is the fact that you will have some windows in the rear elevations of those existing properties, which will look onto the rear gardens of those proposed dwellings to a higher level than you would normally like. We normally ask for distances of 10 metres from the rear windows to a common boundary with a garden. We haven't got those distances there. So there's not an awful lot the developer can do about that. But I think councillors should be aware that those gardens are going to be overlooked to a higher degree than what we would normally like. So it's something for you to be aware of. As I say, it is all set out in the report, and I think that's the only problem area really. But as I say, it's not so much an impact on the existing residents, it's the impact that the existing residents will have on the new occupiers of the new dwellings, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
In terms of the density issue, if you can just zoom out of there, Ian, slightly, if you can just stay on the same plan. I know there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of the objectors have made reference to the fact that the site is specifically referenced as being, capable of 60 dwellings in the LDP. I mean, that is a figure that was used during the preparation of the LDP when not all of the site constraints would have been known, etc. So it's an indicative figure, really. It's not something that needs to be adhered to, certainly by us as kind of development management officers. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the density, it works out to be just over 30 dwellings per hectare, which is actually kind of quite low, to be honest. I mean, as planning officers and developers, there's normally the emphasis on the efficient use of land. So we don't really want low density development, which could result in more greenfield sites being taken up in the future. So where you've got land, obviously you want to maximize the use of that land within reason. So in terms of the layout, I mean, I would suggest at first glance it doesn't look cramped. We've got quite a lot of greenery. We've got certain pockets of green space throughout the site. You've got the central area of the site where you've got that band of trees which are covered by the tree preservation order. That kind of nicely splits the site into two halves, although you have got the pedestrian route connecting the southern end of the site to the northern. We've also got various pedestrian access routes coming in from different parts of the site. So on the basis that we think the density is acceptable, the garden sizes are okay, all of the houses having sufficient parking areas. We really don't think the number of dwellings being proposed is excessive in this instance. There's no real problem areas. I know Matt's team are happy with the access roads that are being proposed within the site. And I certainly don't think that there are any problems with the existing highway network not having the capacity to deal with an additional 98 dwellings.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much. I got Councillor Des Thomas first and then Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. There seems to be some kind of confusion arisen over which schools should benefit from the funding available for education needs. We've had both local members who assure the committee that the whole site and the catchment is in the Castleflucher area, and yet the other, I forget the name now, the other primary school is going to benefit from the funds. I think this should be ironed out. I mean, we've even got the cabinet member for education conferring with the local member to assure us that that's the case. The other fact is due to the fact that April 11th is the date for objections. Unless the officers can assure us that Pobl are desperate to make a start in this site, because I'm to be convinced on that, because it's still sitting on the site in Langland, which we approved a couple of years ago now, and very little has been done there other than for a hedge to be trimmed back. So there seems to be a case building here for us to adjourn this until the next meeting of the planning, which it can then be addressed fully.
Okay, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just come back for a quick one to Chris again. Regarding what you said about the rear garden 10 metres to the nearest boundary, that I presume is in the SPG. So why are we deviating from what we're asking? Normally, we can't have an ad hoc situation. Today we'll accept it, tomorrow we won't. We got to stick to the rules, and the rules are 10 metres. So why are we bending the rules on this occasion? Why are we doing it?
Okay, if I can come back on those points. So, yeah, the point I was making about the garden areas, Councillor Evans, was the proposed dwellings that they have got 10-metre long gardens, which complies with the SPG. the point I was raising, it's the existing houses which have got short gardens. So as planners, we've got no control over that. It's somebody else's garden. So, but the point I'm making is because those houses have got such short gardens, those houses, the existing houses, they are closer to the rear garden boundary of the new plots. So what I'm saying to you is there'll be more overlooking from the existing houses onto the proposed garden areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that explains it.
But the proposed gardens, the garden lengths, they all meet SPG standards.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Going back to the education issue, I mean, you know, we've raised the question today after the site visit, Councillor Richards, with education. I can only really tell you what we've been advised, and the advice was in the response and during the conversation that we had today that the catchment school is Triachaf. I mean, I know I'm not going to argue with any councillor because I'm just conveying what we've been told, but that's the advice we've had, that the catchment school is Triachaf, and it's on that basis that all the calculations have been made. I mean, I know, sorry, it's a bit difficult because I know you can't speak, but I know earlier on today was mentioned that the school, the school in your ward, the school in your ward, has got surplus capacity. Now, obviously, we can only ask for money when a school hasn't got capacity. So if the school has got capacity, we couldn't in any event ask for money towards that school. I mean, I don't know how much capacity there is in that local in the ward school, if I can call it that. But as I say, education have given us all of their responses based on what they've told us or confirmed to us earlier today, which is that the catchment school is Triachaf. In terms of the developer, what they've indicated to us, Councillor Thomas, is the determination of this application is time sensitive. The development is reliant on funding from Welsh Government, as I understand. I think they initially told us that they needed to secure planning permission by the end of the financial year, which would have been kind of end of March. They've had, on my understanding is, they've had an extension on the basis that they were told we'd get it to this planning committee. But I've been led to believe that it is time sensitive. So, you know, that shouldn't really have any bearing on how you determine the application, but that's what we've been told.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Yeah, that's our understanding as well. Okay, then I got no one else wants to come back. No, I got no other speakers, and then so the recommendation you see there again is one of approval, and we can now take a vote on that recommendation. But bearing in mind, of course, the amendments in the that we've had since.
Yeah, Councillor Cyril Anderson.
For.
Peter Black.
For.
Phil Downing.
For.
Will Evans.
For.
Mary Jones.
For. Sorry, I couldn't unmute my mic. For.
Thank you. Mike Lewis.
For.
Paulette Smith.
For.
Des Thomas.
For.
Mike White.
For.
And Paul Lloyd.
Yeah, for.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And now we move on to item 4 now then, which is the Pedro Road, Pontardalis. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Ian's got a presentation to run on this one for members. Whilst he's loading it, whilst it's not on the update sheet, the report should have included reference to policy RP5 of the LDP, which is the avoidance of flood risk. And in addition, the Countryside Access Team also commented that the proposal affects public rights of way Lochar 9 and 10 LC 9 and 10, and they would need to be consulted on proposed changes to the paths before any works take place. But this doesn't affect anything in terms of the outcome of the report. So as you'll see, we've got the site location plan. The application's been reported to committee as it's been called in by the local member and hit the committee threshold. The application site comprises an active travel route between Pentre Road in the bottom right-hand corner and Tidal Reach in Pontedillis by the Tesco's. It forms part of a wider scheme of connections with permission previously granted between Groves End and Pontedillis, which is a 2021 application. If you can go to the next slide, please, Ian. Thank you. So this is an aerial image of the site from Google Maps, where it runs through the show park before heading northwest into Coedbach Park along an existing track. It goes around the football rugby field and then does a U-turn to run north along the old railway embankment. So the site is very roughly indicated in a grey line for ease of identification and terminates by Tesco on Tidal Reach. The inset shows the extent of ancient woodland in the area. You may note the informal dotted footpath which already runs through the ancient semi-natural woodland that's shown in bright green. You can go to the next slide, please, Ian. Thank you. This is a Google image, effectively the entrance to the active travel route between the showground and the properties on Pentre Road. If you can go to the next slide, please, Ian. So, thank you. So these are site photos. So clockwise from the top left-hand corner, this is a view through the wooded section of Coedbach Park towards the car park area. The top right is a view through the wooded section of Coedbach Park. Again, adjacent trees not affected by the proposed works due to the wide width present, which is sufficient for the shared use. The bottom right is a view north towards Tidal Reach along the former railway track bed. So the site clearance was undertaken by Wales and West Utilities, undertaking maintenance work to their gas main. And the bottom left is a view of the existing surface path adjacent to the football pitches. So you'll note the cut up verge area on the right hand side, and the existing path is proposed to be widened to alleviate this issue for future occurrences. If you can go to the next slide, please, Ian. This is the southern half of the route. So the plan shows the path running through the Showfield site before cutting north and crossing a watercourse heading into Coedbach Park. The track would generally be between 2.5 metres to 3 metres wide, but it would be 2.5 metres where it runs through the park along the existing mulch track that I've just shown you pictures of. A fixed bollard and a removable bollard would be located after the turning head serving the rear of properties on Pentre Road. This is the part of the site that contains the ancient woodland. So we do have in the bottom left-hand corner a typical no-dig section indicated, which is effectively the 2.5 metre wide path with tarmac over a tree text geotextile layer and cell web, commonly used in and around trees. So the track runs over a new bridge structure around the rugby football ground. If you can go to the next slide, please, Ian. This is the northern half of the route. So the route crosses a culverted watercourse and then turns sharply north for the remainder, and will meander to avoid mature trees. There is a new uncontrolled pedestrian crossing proposed at Tidal Reach at the north of the site. In terms of this application, there have been 110 letters of objection were received, along with a petition against the proposal signed by 94 residents. Whilst some residents were supportive of the infrastructure, concerns were raised with the route in terms of its impact on Coedbach Park, the ancient woodlands, the ecological impact and potential danger to users of the park. And residents have also stated that there's also a better alternate route. Pontedillis Town Council, Swansea Tree Forum, the Woodland Trust, the Drainage Officer and Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water have also objected to the proposals. And concerns were also raised by NRW, but no objections were received from the local highways authority, the ecologist or the arboricultural officer. And again, similarly, no objections from CADU, Network Rail, the coal authority or pollution control. So in terms of the principle of the development is considered acceptable. There's a lot of support for sustainable modes of transport, and this is considered necessary infrastructure, so complies with policy CV2. There are no major concerns in terms of the visual impact, with a hard surface proposed instead of the existing mulch track, and the connection would facilitate greater active travel in the authority in link with other routes. Similarly, no overlooking or neighbouring amenity impacts over and above the existing, and no land stability or heritage issues or significant flooding issues, despite part of the site falling within the C1, C2 floodplain at the north. Dŵr Cymru concerns about access to the apparatus, given the path crosses several pieces of infrastructure, but the existing path already does, and it will be adopted, ensuring they had future access going forward under the Highways Act. In terms of trees, it's acknowledged that ancient woodland is irreplaceable and part of the route is through ancient semi-natural woodland. However, the arboricultural officer has walked the route on 2 occasions and is satisfied that with a no-dig area through the woods and conditions, the proposal would not result in the loss or deterioration of the woodland. It can meander to avoid trees where necessary. In terms of ecology, the site runs through Coedbach Sink, site of importance for nature conservation, and the Woingron Marsh Sink. NRW were concerned about the impact on bats, but the ecologist has walked the route and is satisfied that an ecological watching brief and construction environmental management plan would ensure there's no impact, and the mitigation and ecological enhancements are also proposed. So the route itself is considered acceptable in terms of its planning impacts, and there's no reason considered to be no reason to refuse the permission on the basis that there may be a more preferable route elsewhere. For the officer recommendation is one of approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andrew. First up, one of the local members, Councillor Kevin Griffiths, and thank you for your patience in waiting with us till we get to this item. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I have to declare personal interest as a ward member and town councillor. Coedbach Park is 100 years old and it's the only public free space established woodland and protected species. It also has the Queen's protection on it. There are vulnerable people working in the park, elderly and visually impaired, as well as young children along the route proposed. Public safety is a concern. Already dismounted cyclists can visit the entrance via 3 entrances and need not take a shortcut through the park. Original option 1 is shorter, more direct route, which will not impact on spectators entering the RFC, those using the car park, visitors dropped off at the sensory garden, under 5s at the Ferry Glen corner, AFC supporters and players using the outdoor gym. Current proposal means Hazel will need to be cut back at the rear of the RFC ground to widen the path to access Tidal Reach, which has a deep fall on the right. This will be avoided along the route we're asking to go. We've recently had a spurt of dog attacks on people in the park, with one elderly lady taken to hospital because of injuries caused by the dog. I've read most of the recommendations that the planning have put forward and hope all the recommendations are taken into consideration when you decide on the route you recommend to the committee and the views of the community. The only question I have is why has it been recommended to go through the old woods? Is it because of the cost?
Thank you very much. Moving on to a committee, I can see another local member, Councillor Downer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As you're aware, I called this application to committee due to the number of objections and certain concerns that I have. Active travel say walking and cycling are good for our health and well-being. They also say walking and cycling are the preferred option for shorter journeys, and the Active Travel Act requires local authorities to produce integrated network maps identifying the walking and cycling routes required to create fully integrated network for walking and cycling. I say that, Chair, because from the outset, I'm not against an active travel route between Pentre Road and Tidal Reach. But I do have reservations on this particular route with regards to safety aspects. There have been objections with regards to the Second Woods, as it is commonly known, by the Woodlands Trust. And as Simon has said in his report, there's also been objections from drainage officer, NRW have asked for further information. Without this, they would object, and Welsh Water have also objected. As I say, I have safety concerns. After emerging from the second woods, the proposed route would then pass directly across the entrance to Pontylice Rugby Club ground and touches the car park, which is very busy, especially when the rugby and the football are both playing home. This area is also busy when junior football and rugby play home or on training nights, as every child is driven there by their parents. And between them, they have over 30 junior teams. The rugby ground also hosts Our Place, a support organisation meeting the needs of young people with special needs, and some have reduced sensory awareness. They use this area Monday to Friday. Many of the young people assist friends of Coedbach constructing new wood back paths and are frequently seen helping in the second woods. Immediately passing the entrance to the rugby field, the proposed route takes a sharp left turn directly onto the perimeter path of the football fields, where spectators currently stand to watch the games. And maybe I should declare an interest there because one of them was watching the game is me. And on one side of the path, there is a small garden for toddlers known as the Fairy Glen, and this has a blind spot to the path. Along the path behind the goalmouth, there are outdoor wooden gym apparatus positioned along the length of the path. So, Mr. Chairman, taking into account the objections received and the safety concerns I have highlighted, I cannot support the recommendation and will be voting against. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you very much. Any member wish to speak? Was there anything, Andrew, you wanted to respond to? Or moved again?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, in terms of the comments received, as addressed in the report, if the tree officer is satisfied that the impact on trees is acceptable, and similarly in terms of Welsh Water comments, they've been addressed. If the primary issue is one of safety, seemingly, we've been advised by colleagues in highways that they raise no issue in terms of the safety of the development. Clearly, there's a lot going on in and around Coedbach Park, but you often see active travel routes in and through parks. And there's nothing in this instance that leads us to believe that this proposal is unacceptable in this location. And you can see on the photos I provided that there are tracks that suggest that people are already using this route or part of this route anyway, in and around the football pitch, rugby pitch, for bikes anyway. So as officers, we don't see any reason to refuse the application purely on safety grounds. But as I said, if Matt has anything else he'd like to add, by all means, please do. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Was there anything, Matt?
No, I think Andrew's covered it all off there. There was nothing that we saw that would we thought would lead to any kind of adverse safety effects. It's wide enough, the routes intervisible from one, in each part that it goes through the woodland.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had no issue with it at all.
Okay, thank you all. Right, I got no other hands up to speak, so we can we can move to the vote, which is the recommendation is to approve. And so we, in the normal fashion, take that vote.
Cyril Anderson.
For.
Peter Black. Peter's gone. Phil Downing.
Against.
Will Evans. For. Mary Jones has left. Mike Lewis.
For.
Paulette Smith.
For.
Des Thomas.
For.
Mike White.
For.
Paul Lloyd.
For.
7-4-1 against Chester.
Thank you very much. And then we move on to item 5, which is the Mumbles Prom and Seawall. That report begins at page 241. David, it's yours, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, back to me. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mumbles Promenade and Seawall. So effectively, this is described as a coastal defence project, but I think it's a bit more than that because it seeks to use the opportunity to enhance the public realm and assist regeneration and tourism initiatives along the section of promenade as well. So what are we looking at? The red line area basically shows the extent of the site. So in the north of the site, you've got that extends past Oystermouth Square, past the Dairy Car Park, and it extends, I think it's 1.1 kilometres past Oystermouth Square, past Oyster Wharf, across Southend, and terminates before Verdi's effectively. So that's the extent of the site. We all know Mumbles. So it's quite a significant project. And as I say, it's not just a flood defence scheme. It seeks to enhance the public realm and provide some additional green infrastructure as well. So what are we talking about? Next slide, Ian, please. So I don't know if you can see that, but effectively what those sections are trying to indicate, I'm quite sure if we can read that, but that's not important as such, but it's basically the existing sea defences are in a poor state effectively. So unless something is done, then sea defence, the sea defences will fail and Mumbles will obviously suffer from tidal flooding. And there are times currently when the promenade currently suffers from overtopping, when we have a high tide and wind, and some of you will be familiar with those instances. Coupled to that, why we're doing it as well is because, as we are aware, climate change and sea level rise. So obviously that is predicted to rise, and if we don't increase the strength and the height of the sea defences, then again, obviously that will cause the inundation of Mumbles. So we will lose that will obviously affect properties, businesses, and obviously the promenade as well. So what's proposed effectively is in 3 sections. The existing sea defence from the north is effectively an existing seawall, and then up towards Southend it becomes a revetment wall. So the sea defence is effectively in 3 proposals. The first phase effectively is an encasement of the existing seawall at the north end, which is Derry, Oystermouth Square area, and with basically to strengthen and put a concrete structure with a toe at the base of the seawall to strengthen it. The middle section then extends basically from Oystermouth Square, and that goes further up towards Southend, and effectively that involves the redevelopment of a seawall. And at that location, it includes the additional parapet, as you can see, the secondary defence wall to the rear, and it also increases the height of the existing promenade as well. And then the third element is the revetment, which is Southend up towards Verdi's. And as you can see, that involves the encasement of the existing revetment and the parapet, and again increases the height of the promenade. So as I say, it's a bit more than just a sea. Those are the sea defence elements to it, but it's a bit more than that because it seeks to rationalise some of the existing car parking along the promenade, some of the landscaping areas, and it takes the opportunity to enhance both of those features. If you go to the next slide, please, Ian. So this is right at the north end of the site. You can see Site 1. So obviously past the Dairy Car Park, which is trying to show the typical sections in relation through the wall at various points. So you can see the relationship to the existing grass landscape right at the north end, and then through the car park, Oystermouth Square car park, and you can see the relationship to the seawall. If you shoot through a couple of these, next one, Ian. So section 2, as you can see, again, that shows the relationship of the existing seawall, which, as you can see, that goes past Oyster Wharf and past the tennis court area. So what obviously it's quite difficult detail, but you can see the relationship to Oyster Wharf, and it takes the opportunity that's a pinch point of the promenade, as you're aware. So it seeks the opportunity to widen the promenade as well, which I think it widens it to about 6 meters, which obviously is of considerable benefit to pedestrians and cyclists alike. You can also see at that point, where I point out the tennis court area is not currently part of this proposal. That would be considered as a separate proposal. But what you can see there is the green area. So as you're aware, that section of road car parking has recently become a cul-de-sac effectively following the Oyster Wharf development. So this current proposal does propose to remove that section of road and car parking and that obviously, as you can see from the green in, that will provide additional area of public realm and landscaping as quite a considerable benefit to the scheme. Next slide, Ian, please. So this then obviously the big chunk of green area is the existing playground at Southend. And you can see the slipway. So again, along the promenade, you'd probably be aware there's quite a lot of boat parking at the minute. So the proposal is that boat parking will be removed, and anybody who wants to moor a boat, they will be moved up towards Knapp Rock. So that improves the opportunity to provide this landscape and green infrastructure along this section of promenade. And you can also see there the parking will be reconfigured. So at the minute, it's quite a large expanse of car parking, which is wasted area, so that the parking will be chevroned off Mumbles Road. And the last section in this phase, and this is right at the top of the site next to Verdi's, and you can see to the left, that green area is Henbont Gardens, so there's an opportunity there to enhance landscaping, and again the existing car parking will be reconfigured and space reallocated, and you can see the sections as well going through that sub part of the site. So let's move along. So some of these attempting to show the landscaping through the site. These are down towards Oyster Wharf, I believe. So that's trying to show the relationship, the middle section BB. So obviously that's a critical element where you've got this outside seating area, and that's attempting to show the relationship between the two. So you've obviously got the promenade, the parapet wall, and then you've got the secondary wall in, and that will become a feature with accommodating seating, etc. But that functions as a secondary sea defence as well, and it'll be quite a nice outside seating. We've got some images as we go along. If we move along, again, this is the elements up towards Southend and the relationship to the existing Southend playground. And you can see an increased height arrangement there, which will be the secondary defence mechanism, and that will be used as an opportunity to create interesting landscaping feature and additional play facilities at that location. You can see the section of the wall and the parapet, which will strengthen the sea defences. So obviously what the general policy, obviously why are we doing this, as I say, is essentially because the sea defences are under stress, and if we don't, then the Mumbles area will become flooded. The official policy for this area is under the shoreline management plan, so it's basically holding the line, which effectively means strengthening the existing sea defences along their existing line arrangement. So it's not retreat and it's not moving forward either. So there's in the report, obviously you will see there's quite a lot of detailed consultation responses from various people from just go through Cadw, GIGAT, Welsh Water, National Resources Wales. They raised quite technical issues and ecology, detailed placemaking comments from our placemaking heritage team, and there's quite detailed planning conditions within the report, and these range from protection of the structural integrity of the water main sewer, which runs along the promenade from Welsh Water. Green infrastructure, obviously hard landscaping maintenance, piling operations, archaeological features, construction method statements, and mechanisms to control and mitigate the development under construction. Obviously, it won't be constructed in one go. It'll be a phased development, I think approximately 100 meters per time, obviously, and that will try and mitigate the impacts as construction goes along. And that will involve detailed construction method statements, access track construction, temporary deviations of the existing promenade walkway, etc., etc. So it conforms to policy. There's a lot of technical issues which are addressed in the report and through the planning conditions. The ecological aspect of the scheme, it will remove approximately 5 of the existing trees at the site, which are not of a strong standard, but it will provide a strong green infrastructure enhancement scheme, and which would involve planting of 46 new trees. The rationalization of the car parking will lose approximately 5 spaces, but that will be mitigated by a general parking strategy for the wider Mumbles area. So in conclusion, obviously it provides a strong flood defence scheme for Mumbles, but it's got the added benefits of wider regeneration benefits, widen the promenade, reconfigured the car parking arrangement, and it would also enhance the public realm. Yeah, keep going, please, Ian. Yeah, so there's a summary of the proposal. So not only does it provide a 1 in 200 standard of protection, it allows the promenade to be widened, improved street furniture, lighting, green infrastructure, seating arrangements, play areas, and it would obviously enhance green infrastructure and landscaping along the bay. If you keep going through, we've got some images. These are from the application. Obviously, this, as you can see, is the promenade outside Oyster Wharf. So you can see the arrangement of the widened promenade, secondary wall, landscape features, relationship to the piazza outside seating area, Oyster Wharf. Next one. That is adjacent to the tennis court. So again, you can see the widened promenade, the removal of the existing access car parking, which provides opportunity to provide enhanced public realm area behind the existing secondary wall. And the next one. So this was obviously up towards Southend. So you can see the potential there for not just green infrastructure, but obviously it's seating and some interesting play areas for children. And the next one. Again, that's adjacent to Southend Gardens, the existing play area. So again, the opportunity to provide some interesting play facilities. And the last one, I think. Again, so that's the embankment opposite the existing playground at Southend. So obviously, instead of just being a defence feature, obviously the opportunity is taken to provide some interesting landscaping and play area facilities for the area. So as I say, it's not just a coastal defence scheme. The opportunity is there to provide a general enhancement along this promenade, providing additional landscaping and additional interesting play features. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I have 2 speakers down, but I don't think they were right.
No.
So anyway, okay, I got. We've only got 2 hands up already. Councillor Des Thomas first.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Chair, do you have the local member present?
No, been informed.
Oh, okay, that's surprising. It's a chance of the local residents to have a verbal input to this meeting, and there's no local member. Oh, okay. Right then. Yeah, well, obviously, Chair, opportunity of a lifetime, isn't it, for the for this area? I think the current seawall, promenade, and that land that was reclaimed from the sea must go back. I don't know. I'm only guessing. Late 1800s, early 1900s, probably. And yeah, here we are today with the opportunity to improve the area substantially. It is tired. It is in desperate need of improvement. We're all aware of the boating, the large boats by the children's play area there have become an eyesore. I've been complaining about those for a number of years, but I'm told that they've paid their dues, their parking dues. Apparently they've all been members of the boating club and it's been a block booking, but nevertheless, they've been really poor condition and a general eyesore. Widening of the promenade is absolutely welcome. It's a big issue. There's a conflict between pedestrians and cyclists and skateboarders and roller skates, whatever. So the widening there is brilliant. The only niggling thing I've got in the back of my mind is the speed of the cyclists. That's still use the promenade. Even though the speeds they go on would be more suited to the highway, they do tend to go a bit quickly. If some kind of speed restriction for the cyclists could be thought of and introduced, that would be welcome. Otherwise, Chair, brilliant, absolutely fantastic. As I say, opportunity of lifetime to improve this area and to get it, suitable for future generations. Thank you, Chair.
Indeed. Thank you. Councillor McLewis.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I must say it all looks very, very nice. But, and it's a big but, you mentioned the possibility of sea level rises. Can you tell me how much higher is the proposed new wall to the existing? And how does this conform to the future expected technical advice notes we sea level rises from Welsh Government? Thank you.
Yeah, we'll come back to that when we finish with the speakers. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Thomas. This is going to be an outstanding facelift for that area, and being that it's a tourist area as well, I can only say 100% behind it. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you so much. Right, I got no other hands up. Just 1 or 2 points. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, sorry. Okay. Is that an old hand there? Yeah, go on. David, just 1 or 2 points there, wasn't there?
Yeah, with regards to height, generally where the promenade is being increased in height, it's generally about 6.5 meters AOD. It's been increased approximately to about 7.2 meters.
Right. Okay.
Okay. TAN 15 is the technical advice note which we consider flood risk at the minute, and that's what's being considered against the proposal. So the sea level rise has been considered against current estimates. What those levels might be in the future, I don't know, will be subject to further investigation, to be honest with you. I'm quite sure. There's a question about cycle speed. I'll bring Matt on that point.
Yeah, I think the onus would be on people to share use of the path. I mean, cycle speed limits. Yeah, I get exactly where the council's coming from. How would that be enforced in the future? I have no idea. But the widening of the promenade, extra space for people to use, would make the current arrangements much better, because we've got nearly twice the space you have currently in front of the sort of Oyster Wharf area where they've got the biggest pinch.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Councillor Thomas, put your hand up again.
Yeah, just on the speed limits for cyclists, Chair. you know, if it was vehicles, we'd come up with a scheme, wouldn't we? Whether it's chicanes or rumble strips or whatever. Surely somebody can come up with some means of slowing cyclists down.
Yeah, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, I share Des's views, but there are cycle paths, shared cycle paths throughout the authority, right? I got them in my ward. And it always goes back to the highway code. If people comply with the highway code and give preference to pedestrians and ride sensibly, it's like the motorists on the road. They'll, you know, they'll break all sorts of rules, ignore nearly everything. You'll never stop it, will you? So as far as I'm concerned, the highway code is the Bible. They should abide by it and you know, ride sensibly.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I've got no other hands up. Members wishing to speak. Councillor Thomas, is that legacy hand, as they call it? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, legacy hand.
Oh, sorry, just want to make sure everyone's had a say.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
All right. So, all right, thank you all. And again, you can see the recommendation there on page 262 is what to approve. So you take a vote on that recommendation. Oh, Councillor Liu, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Late, but I just want a bit more assurance on the height of this proposal, because the council is spending a tremendous amount of money on this scheme. I don't have to revisit it in 10 years' time to do it all again because they haven't built it high enough. I just want some assurance from David that the proposals are compliant with what will be needed in the future. That's all. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Yeah, I just referred to the report actually. I'll just read from the report. So it's the sea defences obviously is meant to approach the structural deterioration of the existing defences, tidal overtopping. And also the associated flood risk is expected to increase in the future due to predicted sea level rises estimated at 0.39 meters between 2021 and 2070. So effectively, that's what it's trying to address, and it seeks to provide a 1 in 200-year flood defence system.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Thank you.
Right, okay, as I said, you see the recommendations approval, and we will take that vote now.
Councillor Sarah Anderson.
For.
Peter Black's gone. Phil Downing. Councillor Downing.
Yeah, for. I was having trouble with my mic in.
Will Evans. Councillor Will Evans. Councillor Mike Lewis.
For.
Councillor Paulette Smith.
Definitely for.
Des Thomas.
If I had 2 votes, I'd vote for.
Mike White.
100% for.
Paul Lloyd. And Will Evans.
Yeah, Councillor Evans for.
Thank you. Unanimous. Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you so much. And on item 6, we go up to 136, 137 Woodfield Street in Morriston.
Yep, that's my item, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, so yep, it's an application for a change of use of ground floor shop at 136, 137 Morriston from an A1 shop to an A3 restaurant. New shop front, installation of rear door, external stairs and external flue. I'll just refer you to the update sheet because there's a few updates on this one. The description of development is incorrect on the report. The application has been amended and is now for a new shop front and not the retention, which will be deleted from the description. As noted in the committee report, the application has been advertised as a departure application and the updated consultation period does in fact expire today. There's been no further comments received to date as a result of the revised consultation. The site history section should have included a previous application at the site. which is 2018-1443 full, and that was for the conversion of the upper floors to 2 flats with rear extension, rear dormers and external flue, alterations to shop front and new first floor front window. Condition 2 is also proposed to be amended to include the proposed floor plans, which have been omitted in error. There's also an error on the floor plans in relation to the provision of central double doors. These are omitted on the elevation drawings. As such, the conditions proposed to be amended to clarify the elevation drawings are correct in relation to the position of the doors. Okay, turning to the application itself. The application is being reported to committee as a departure application for a change of use from an A1 premises previously used as a hair and beauty salon into a restaurant cafe A3 use, which has not been marketed for the requisite 12-month period, hence why it's been advertised as a departure and is being reported to committee. The premises comprise 2 mid-terrace units that have been amalgamated into one shop located at the northern end of the district centre and Morriston Conservation Area, close to Morriston Cross. Units located between A1 Convenience Store, Big News, and A2 Estate Agents, Dawson's. External alterations comprise the installation of a flue on the rear elevation, along with external steps, and following negotiations, a new shop front and alterations to the front elevation. Okay, if you go to slide 2, please, Ian. These are the Google Street View images of the site. Top left is a view of the current unit, which has been altered without planning permission. Top right is a Google Street View image from May 2019, looking southwest with the site between Lifestyle Express and Dawson's Estate Agents, with double yellow lines along the frontage. Bottom left is a view looking north along Woodfield Street with a bus stop in the foreground with a mix of A1, A2, A3 uses in the vicinity. The unit has rear access for parking for commercial units and it is a 2-bed flat at first floor level. Okay, if you go to slide 3, Ian. These are the existing elevations and show the existing front elevation in the top left-hand corner, the small windows at first floor level on the front elevation. Property has a long single-storey rear projection illustrated on the side elevations on the right-hand side, and the rear elevation is shown on the bottom left-hand corner. Okay, slide 4, please, Ian. This is the proposed elevations. Top left shows the front elevation of the unit with a traditionally designed shop front and windows at first floor level with a more vertical emphasis as compared to the windows at the moment with a more horizontal emphasis. On the rear, a new 5-metre external flue is proposed that would extend beyond the ridge height of the property, albeit it would not be prominent from the front and external steps. The bottom left-hand corner is a cross-section through the new traditional shop front with an angled fascia sign concealing the roller shutter housing. The application forms indicate the premises are proposed to open from 6 in the morning right through until 12 AM, 7 days a week. In terms of the consultation responses, there's been no objections from members of the public. In terms of consultees, there have been no objections from strategic planning and placemaking following amendments, local highway authority or pollution control, subject to some further clarification of the details of the elevation and odour abatement measures. Following negotiations on the design of the shop front, visual and residential amenity matters are considered to be acceptable, subject to conditions, including those requested by consultees. The amended proposals are considered to preserve and enhance the Morriston Conservation Area. Changes to the front elevation would be secured by a condition. A reduction in the opening hours between 7 AM to 11 PM every day, except Fridays and Saturdays, is proposed, given the proximity of residential properties. And this is the hours would be restricted by condition 3. This is considered to strike an appropriate balance and is consistent with other nearby A3 uses. So the key issue really is the principle of the development itself. In terms of the principles, it's been advertised as a departure as no evidence has been submitted in terms of the premises being marketed for the requisite 12-month period. Policies RC5 and RC9 of the LDP are relevant, and whilst not traditionally retail, national plan and local plan policies note the importance of other complementary uses to help aid vibrancy and attractiveness within district centres, as well as encouraging flexibility in these difficult times. The proposals consider to be an appropriate complementary commercial use of an appropriate scale with an active frontage. There are positive impacts associated with bringing an empty unit back into occupation, and demand for retail uses is low post-COVID. A1 and there's A1 retail uses on one side. On balance, it's considered that the proposal will have benefits that make the application acceptable, despite not being marketed for the requisite 12-month period. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Simon. Any member wish to speak? No? You sure? All right. So we can, if that's the case, then you can see the recommendation is one to approve again, and we can proceed to that vote.
Councillor Cyril Anderson.
For.
Bill Downing.
For.
Will Evans.
For.
Mike Lewis.
For.
Paulette Smith.
For.
Des Thomas.
For.
Mike White.
For.
Paul Lloyd.
Yep, for.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that. And our final item is we're off to the Dolphin Inn. And we see the report begins on page.
Yeah, okay. Got the thanks, Ian. Yeah, so this application relates to the Dolphin Inn public house, which is in Llanryddion.
1 minute.
The site is located within the Gower AONB and also in the Llanmorlais conservation area. So there's two elements to the proposal. One is to carry out works to the actual pub itself, and the other element then is to site two glamping pods in the rear beer garden of the pub. So in terms of the extensions to the actual pub itself, there's a 2-story rear extension proposed, and there are also some external changes, including things like roof lights and so on. There we are. So the top set of drawings show the existing pub. So the very top right shows the front elevation of the pub, which is in terms of the fenestration detail is going to remain changed. There will be some changes to the render, etc., being used. The main change, if you look on is the rear elevation, where you've got an existing single-story lean-to extension, which will be replaced by a 2-story with large windows. The changes to the pub are required in order to provide holiday accommodation at first floor. So if you go down to floor plans, Ian, so you can see what the pub want to do is create 4 serviced bedrooms at first floor element in order to attract visitors, in order to create an extra income stream to the pub. So we've got no objection to that element at all. And the other element, as I mentioned, is the siting of the glamping pods within the rear curtilage. So if you can go back up to the glamping pods, Ian, as you can see, I think there's elevation drawings. There we go. They aren't very big. They would take a maximum of, I would suggest, two persons. It's basically one double bed with a small living kitchen area and a little shower room. So they are quite small. They're to be positioned in the rear beer garden of the pub. So if you can scroll down, Ian, I think sorry, maybe up actually. Yeah, so if you look at the bottom right, you can see them there. So there's 2 there in the rear beer garden. They'll have parking and so on. We've had 3 objections, but we haven't got any real concerns with the proposal. The main reason we've brought this to committee is because policy TR6 of the LDP states that static caravans or new static caravans will not be permitted in the Gower A1B. The LDP goes on to define what a static caravan is, and it actually defines as these glamping pods as falling within the general definition of a static caravan. So although there is a technical departure to policy TR6, what we are saying is that they are clearly not akin to a conventional static caravan. So given the scale of them, although there is a technical departure to TR6 and we've advertised the application as a departure, there's no real planning objection from us to the pods. They're quite not uncontroversial, I would suggest. And I don't know if members may recall that we had a similar application at Windmill Farm about 3 or 4 committees ago, I think it was, where we brought a similar application to committee because, again, they were a technical departure, but we took the view then that you can't really describe. They're very, very different to static caravans, so they shouldn't be assessed really in the same manner as them, given the scale and their general appearance. So we are therefore recommending approval, Chair.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much, Chris. We have had a request from the local member who's not present today for a site visit. So I need to put that to the committee first. Anyone second that or?
No.
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I'd second it, Chair.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Well, no,
Well, can we take the vote on the site?
Okay,
visit?
yeah, sure, yeah.
Well, then,
well, we need to move it on the seconder actually, because the local member isn't here, so.
I got that wrong. Right. I need to move around.
No, I got it wrong myself.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Then we'll move in now.
So is somebody happy to move? Local members asked for a site visit. Is somebody happy to move and second in his absence?
No?
No.
All right.
No. Okay.
No,
Thank
all right,
you.
Councillor Thomas. That's all right.
Right, question then, Chair. Can I ask, on page, I think it's 315, policy TR6, says new sites for touring caravans and/or camping will be conditioned to restrict the use and occupancy. Will be conditioned to restrict the use and occupancy records must be made available. Right, if we're restricting the use and yet you expect occupancy to take place.
So, yeah, so which, you said 315, which policy were you referred to, sorry, Councillor?
TR6, Chris.
TR6.
Chris Baker come in, probably help you. I assume it's referring to condition 3 where we restrict the number of days it's occupied and how it's occupied.
Yeah, the occupancy conditions that we impose, what we've tried to avoid is a situation where people are kind of residing within these units for kind of longer than they should be. So there's at the Gower, for example, you'll find that there are certain sites where people have got, say for example, you start the caravans. People have got to start a caravan in there. They are the only person. They are the only people allowed to use the starter caravans. A lot of the site operators don't allow the owners to rent them out to third parties, for example. So what you tend to find is you don't get kind of true tourists visiting the Gower. They tend to be blocked up by the actual starter caravan owners. Similarly, you often get on some of the touring caravan sites, you'll get the operators will allow you to have like a seasonal pitch, for example. So say, for example, I have a seasonal pitch. I would take my touring caravan down there in March, leave it there all year, and I'm basically blocking up a pitch on that site. Now, what a lot of our policies are trying to do is basically trying to stop that happening. So if you've got a touring caravan, there's quite a few of our policies which would basically say that you can have your caravan on a site, but you can only be there for 28 consecutive days, and you can only have it there, I think it's 65 days in one calendar year, so that you are not blocking that pitch and stopping your genuine tourists who may want to visit there from further afield, for example, from going to the Gower.
Sort of transient people, yeah.
Yeah, so quite often people have said to us in the past, and this is reflected in a lot of our LDP policies. If you actually want to try and book a static caravan down the Gower for a fortnight, for example, there's just nothing available because site operators won't allow the static caravan owners to do that. So a lot of our policies are designed to try and move away from that. And the same with the touring pitches. We are saying you can have your touring pitches, but you cannot rent them out as a seasonal pitch, for example. They've got to be, they can be rented out on a limited basis so that space is available for other people to come to the Gower.
Okay, but these are pods. These are going to be static, aren't they?
They are.
What's the topography of the land? Are they overlooking the adjoining dwellings?
Not really. No, they I think the land does bank up slightly at the back, but there's the overlooking would be no worse than if the site was being used as a beer garden, which is what that part of the site is used for. If I can just refer, was it condition 3? Did you say, Ian? Sorry, I'm just scrolling down.
That's the occupancy one, yeah.
Yeah, so what condition 3, councillor, what we are trying to do there is we are trying to ensure that you don't have one person residing there for say 6 months of the year. So it's got to be made available, as I say, for either 28 consecutive days or no more than 65. So that one person couldn't book that for an entire season and basically live there for 6 months of the year.
Yeah. Okay, but even that's 2 months, isn't it? 65 days is 2 months plus. Yeah.
Yeah, but obviously that would have to be spread over the course of a season. So you could book,
but not consecutive. Okay, I'm with you.
You could book 28 consecutive days. So, which is obviously 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But that's what the policies try and do. They try and prevent people from block booking these different sites so that they are genuinely made available for tourists.
Okay, thank you for your patience, but in the absence of the local member, I'm not going to propose a site visit. If he can't take the trouble to attend the committee and ask for it himself, I'm not going to do it for him. So thank you. Thanks for your patience.
Oh, sorry, fine, thank you. Councillor Evans.
Yeah, Chris, this, as you rightly say, this is the second time within a few months we've had one of these. It strikes me that the policy needs perhaps to be amended because there's an anomaly here where it's in the same category, a pod is in the same category as a static caravan, which is forbidden in the area of the Gower, natural beauty. So why don't we amend our policy? We can't keep going on like this because today we accept it, tomorrow we don't. At the moment, personally, I've overseen 2. This is the second one, but they're going to increase, obviously. So why don't we just amend the policies?
Yeah, yeah, good point. And I strongly suspect that when we review the LDP, we probably will review that definition. I think this is only the second application. I think it's this one and the Windmill Farm one where we've had these kind of glamping pods proposed since the adoption of the LDP. So we're not having many applications for them, obviously, clearly, but yeah, I think it's probably something we do need to review when we look at the
just a thought, because you've got them in old walls, for instance. There's glamping pods in old walls, right? Whether that's before the LDP, I don't know, but so I would assume that you're going to get an increase in these applications, maybe a trickle at a time, you know what I mean? But we need to be singing from the same sheet, don't we? We need to have
absolutely.
Policy. Okay.
Yeah, it's just the nature of them is such that when they'd obviously sited or they positioned on a site, and they are basically there for 12 months of the year. So
Yeah.
whereas your touring caravans are obviously brought on and off during the season. So this is why they've been compared to a static caravan because of their permanency, if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is something that, it's happening now, and we need to address it. Okay, thank you. Well, Councillor Mike Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. It just addressed to Chris, really. When you pulled the plans up, Chris, I couldn't determine whether these two glamping pods could be seen from the roadway. I just wanted your confirmation one way or the other. I know it's only a small point, but I think it's relevant. So could you enlighten me, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got the Dolphin pub to the front, which is obviously the lane itself is quite narrow. So, and you've got the property called Homeside, which will also screen it. So, you may have some views of them from the road to the east of the area, which is called Standing Stone. You may have some views of them, but they're not going to be particularly prominent. As I mentioned earlier, they are in the conservation area. So Steve Smith has been kind of heavily involved in this one. The project did start off as 3 pods, but Steve did have concerns in terms of the impact on the listed church to the rear of the site, so they've reduced it down to 2. And Steve is now of the view that there's not a real impact on the setting of the listed building, nor on the character of the conservation area. So you may have views, and you may see them from the road, for example, but given the scale of them and the general appearance of them, we think they're basically acceptable. They say the other point I would make is reference to the report. The site is not open countryside. It is within the key village of Llanryddion, so obviously there's probably a bit more scope to allow this form of development than where the visual impact is going to be slightly less than it would be in the middle of a rural setting. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Anderson.
No, he's put his hand down.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. You know me, I'm a avid caravaner. I have been to sites where these glamping pods are, and I don't find them intrusive. Normally, like myself, I got one on site where I am, and the only time they virtually rent them out is if, say, I've got family coming down for a couple of days, and they want to be with the family. They rent them out for about 3 or 4 days. But some different sites have got different time scales. Yeah. I admit to that, but I got nothing against them, tell you the truth. And at the end of the day, it's for tourism. We are a tourist area. I can't see anything against it, tell you the truth.
Okay, thank you. My last speaker then, Councillor Smith.
Oh, I just got a question regarding the policy. So if now I had a touring caravan, and normally it's cost about 2,500 in ground rent. If I did not want anybody else to go and stay in that caravan, I would be penalised. But if I had a static or a cottage, it's mine for 10 or 12 months a year. Is that right? Because I do find that a bit dictatorial if I am getting this right.
Yeah,
Chris?
so in terms of our policies, we've obviously got the policies are there. They try to they can only relate to new development that we are granting planning permission to. So the existing sites at the Gower, we've clearly got no control over them. So all of the static caravan sites and the touring caravans down there, they will operate as they have done for the last however many decades they've been there. we've only got control over the new caravan sites that we grant permission from now on. So those conditions will always form part of those consents. And as I say, they are there to basically ensure that the caravan pitches are always kind of made available to genuine tourists that want to come into the area. Because what we are aware of, as I say, is that you've perhaps got people living within the region who, perhaps someone from the South Wales Valleys, for example. I know people who've got started a caravan down the Gower. They'll go down there perhaps every weekend, but they aren't really spending the money on the local tourism sites and in the areas. Whereas your genuine holiday makers are more likely to spend money on visiting attractions in the area and perhaps eating out and so on and so forth. So we are looking to increase the kind of or improve the economic spin-offs from the new sites that we grant by imposing these restrictions. In terms of the holiday lets, obviously there's little we can do on them at the moment, because if you buy a house, for example, and you rent it out as a holiday let, there's little really that the council can do about it at this stage, although there is talk of the use classes order changing so that holiday lets may have their own use class on their own. So you may find in the future you will need permission to use your house as a holiday let if the legislation changes, which is something being discussed at the moment by Welsh Government.
Is that Airbnb as well?
I think it would be, yeah, because again, there's some there's some communities, perhaps not so much in our area, but I know there's some communities up in North Wales and West Wales where I think it was on the BBC News a couple of months ago, where you've got like a village where virtually every house is being rented out as an Airbnb. So there is no community left there. It's causing problems. It is causing problems.
Okay, thank you, folks.
Thank you. Thanks.
We have no other speakers.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for the explanation. But if I was paying a couple of $1,000 a year to place my caravan, I wouldn't like to be dictated to that X, Y, and Z can then rent it off me.
Oh, come on now. Roger takes you out for dinner every night.
It doesn't matter what Roger does. I'm saying for me.
Okay, folks, can we move
But
to
thank you. Thanks for the
the
explanation.
the recommendation then is one to approve. So we'll take that.
Councillor Cyril Anderson,
For.
Bill Downing,
For.
Will Evans, Mike Lewis, Paulette Smith,
For.
Des Thomas,
For.
Mike White,
For.
Paul Lloyd.
Yes, for.
That's unanimous again.
Thank
Chair.
you. Yeah, that's carried again. Thank you. And this, as we all know, is our final meeting of this electoral period. So I'd like to wish those that were, thank you first for everyone for your commitment to the committee, and wish those that are standing down all the best for the future. So,
Can I just thank everyone, Chair, as one of those that are standing down. This has been one of the most interesting
yes.
committees on the council, and site visits are usually interesting. The discussions we have at planning committees is interesting, and
Yeah.
we contributing to the future of our region and city, aren't we? So thank you all very much, and thank you to the officers in particular for putting up with me. Thank you.
I'd like to